Now I have to press continue. Good morning, all. I'm very happy to have you here as relevant stakeholders to be addressed with our research findings. I'm not going to have a long introducing right now. So I would just give the floor to Marietta to welcome you first.
Thank you, Nasko. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy that we meet again, and especially again on the occasion of discussing our research findings. This was an ongoing process, so we have already shared with you the first outcomes, but we are also very happy that today we have the 3 final reports, which we have worked so much by leading us by Simona Torotcoi in the last 2 years, which was a super exciting process. So on the one hand, I'm also very sad it's over. I really enjoyed working in her company and on this very interesting research. She will explain more about the outcomes and also the importance of filling this gap of having understanding about the situation of young Roma in Europe. Most of the researches have been done in the EU member states, but also because we have collaborated throughout the process with the Council of Europe, and I'm sure Rui will explain more about this. We also extended the focus groups to non-EU member states, and this was also such an added value. Simona will share with you also a lot of data from the first 2 reports, especially from the with young Roma and also with the organizations. But I'm also very glad that we have this report put it together with the focus group interviews, because young Roma from several countries are really stating their needs very well articulated. And I'm very, very happy that we have finished this and put this together. And each of these reports having strong recommendations, not just to institutions, but also for ourselves. So of course, we will discuss during these roundtables your role and how you can support Roma youth participation. But to be honest, we also reflected as Phiren Amenca the outcomes and also how we can turn our agenda and strategy to the needs of young Roma, because it's turned out that, of course, the main consequences are anti-Gypsyism, but also political participation and representation and participation in mainstream youth structures. So our next free strategy is also based on the findings of the research. And I hope that this will really put such an added value in the participation of young Roma in Europe. So I'm not going to talk more because Simona will explain you very well detailed the outcomes and the research findings. I just really want to thank you again for taking the time and to joining and supporting this process, because this is contributing a lot, I think, in the discussion and in the agenda about young Roma people in our countries. So thanks for joining, and I give the floor to Simona if Nasko doesn't want to say anything before.
Simona, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I hope you can see my slides. Yes, so as Marietta said, this has been a long process. We have been working on these reports for quite some while now. And I would say throughout these 2 years, we kind of published 3 important reports under the name of Roma Youth Participation in Europe, Challenges, Needs and Opportunities. And I think this type of research can be considered a milestone, considering the lack of data on Roma youth participation. Altogether, our let's say, research was using 3 main instruments. First, we had an online survey with young Roma. The survey has been completed by almost 300 youngsters. Then we had another online survey with NGOs working with or for Roma youth. We wanted to understand, how NGOs kind of see this issue of Roma youth participation. What are their approaches? What's the quality of Roma youth participation, but also to assess a bit their capacity in terms of working with or for the Roma youth. And lastly, we wanted to triangulate a bit all these two online surveys, and we conducted focus groups with Phiren Amenca members and partners. And altogether, we had 5 focus groups from EU countries, mainly the countries with high percentages of Roma population. But we also had 7 focus groups with non-EU countries. So in short, this is the research methodology. And in today's presentation, I'm going to talk only about the online survey with young Roma, but also the online survey with NGOs, just because of time constraints. And I will also focus mainly on the recommendations. And I selected some recommendations which are targeting mainly those institutions that are present here. So it's not everything, but rather selected. So let's move on with the individual research. As I have mentioned, this was an online survey. It was translated in many languages, so participants could respond in their native language. It covered almost 300 participants, most of them between 19 and 24 years old. And this was mainly focusing on European Union member states. Now, going directly straight into the findings, we asked Roma youth what are the main challenges they face. And as you can see here, some of the main challenges relate to their immediate needs, such as racism and discrimination, training and schooling, access to education, general employment, and maybe less on, gender-related issues, sporting, or drug use and other addictions. So we just have a general feeling of what are the main, let's say, issues for Roma youth. Then going a bit deeper into the specific experiences of anti-Gypsyism Roma youth face, we can see here that 95% of our respondents claim that they have encountered discriminatory words, behavior, or gestures directed at Roma youth or at Roma in general. And 68% of the participants have encountered racism while attending school or university. So I think this shows that racism is still widespread and it's affecting Roma youth, but also, let's say, their confidence, their aspirations, and sometimes contributes to Roma youth self-excluding themselves from the society. Yes, so you can see here, let's say, some of the percentages, but I will just kind of point out what's, let's say, more relevant. And this graph, we see how familiar Roma youth are with EU youth programs. And again, some very striking findings. They are familiar with the European Voluntary Service, around 46% of them, but very few of them have heard about the Youth on the Move initiative or beneficiaries of all these programs. As you can see, maybe the Erasmus Plus is the program in which most of the Roma have kind of benefited from. And again, high percentages of all our respondents said that they have never heard of this type of EU youth programs. So I think it's a good foundation for European institutions in general to kind of reflect on, including more Roma youngsters in their future work. Now, we ask young Roma to whom they turn to support. And this graph shows a bit that most of the Roma youths turn to support to their family, to their friends, but also to the nearby NGO. So these have the highest percentages. And I just want to emphasize a bit the role of NGOs. having NGOs close to young Roma, I think it's very important, because most of the Roma youth start their activism by participating in different activities of NGOs. So I think putting an emphasis, or at least this is what we can do. We cannot intervene in their family or friends relationships, but at least as NGO workers or as institutions, I think there is more place to invest in NGOs. And as we can see also from this figure, Roma youth turn less to political leaders, to religious leaders in their communities. So I think this also shows a bit, their trust or their level of confidence in this type of leaders. Yes, this graph shows what motivates Roma youth to participate in public and social life. And as you can see here, most of the respondents believe that they can be part of changing things, and this is maybe one of the strongest motivations for them to be part of these activities. But also the second most important or frequent response was the races they or people they know have encountered. So we can see there's some sort of relationship between, let's say, their experiences of races and their level of participation in the community. Yes, I'll move to the next one. In terms of forms of Roma youth participation, we can see that Roma youth are rather active citizens and very much involved in the life of their communities. So we see here that around 170 respondents claim that they have participated or they have attended various workshops, seminars, or events on Roma-related topics. So this shows a bit, how they start, how do they move along in their professional life or activist life. And we also see a high level of participation in elections, especially voting. So I think this is also interesting, considering that we don't have so much data on voting behavior of Roma, especially of Roma youth. So seeing this, I think it's a rather positive picture. And we see on the lower part of the graph that maybe less Roma are part of a local action group, or members of a youth council or a student union, or even in the lower part, we see, let's say, their attitudes toward public institutions. And lastly, very few of them are members of political parties, which shows a bit, again, how do they perceive politics in general, or whether they see their place in politics in general. But overall, I think our respondents were rather active in different forms of engagement in their communities. Now, we put here the top 5 barriers that obstructs Roma youth participation. And the first one is the lack of space for Roma youth in mainstream youth structures. And here, I think around 70% of the respondents pointed out to this barrier. Then we have the lack of trust by young people in state and public institutions in general. So I think this is not only a Roma-related thing, but something more mainstream. The third challenge is the negative social attitudes towards young people in general. Yeah, so we hear most of the times that more senior, let's say, professionals, or even the population in general, doesn't really trust that young people can do something. So this kind of keeps Roma youth backwards. The fourth barrier is the lack of resources. And this can be financial, capacity-related resources. And I think it's kind of understandable. Also, the fact that they are young people, some of them study, some of them work, but also I think it's mainly financial resources in general. And the last challenge, I think, relates to the third, is the minimal power given to young people to initiate change, and how different institutions are open towards young people. and how much these institutions consider their opinion. And the last thing that we have asked them, who should be doing what to help youth get publicly engaged. And here we can see that in an equal manner, our respondents believe that both the Roma civil society organizations, but also the states that they live in, should be much more open to Roma youth, and they should support young Roma to get publicly engaged or to participate. In an equal manner, I think it was believed by many of the respondents that each individual can make small steps towards supporting other Romas. So I think that that's also something very nice, looking at what the individual and his or her agency could support every Roma. And maybe lesser percentages looked at the European community in general, like 60% of the respondents, at the European Commission, the European Parliament, OSCE, Council of Europe. But yeah, I think the discrepancies here are not so big. And now I would present some of the recommendations based on our findings. As I said, I haven't presented all the findings, I was rather selective, and now I would just point out to some of the selected recommendations. And I would like to say that we had 4 main themes of recommendations here. We wanted, I mean, one of the biggest things was the idea that we should have young Roma present in the strategic frameworks of different international, European, national, and local organizations and institutions. The second one was about the capacity, building the capacity of young Roma to participate. And we also had a focus on anti-Gypsyism, and I will present each of them as follows. Yeah, so the first one, we believe that, and also our respondents kind of pointed out, so we tried to kind of give a voice to what they wanted. The OSCE and ODF to effectively promote Roma and Sinti youth participation among its member states. The Council of Europe to continue and diversify its work on Roma youth and adopt a Committee of Ministers recommendation on Roma youth participation. The European Youth Forum to initiate a resolution with its member organizations to engage in challenging anti-Gypsyism and active Roma youth participation, and to support the development and implementation of youth policies in line with the needs of Roma youth. I think this is very important. And then 2 recommendations related to the European Commission, DG AC and DG Just. So DG AC should secure Roma youth participation in their decision-making processes, for example, in the EU Youth Strategy Platform, but also to ensure that a post-2027 EU Youth Strategy must include and reflect upon the needs and challenges of young Roma. And also, as we have pointed out from the findings, to ensure that young Roma have access to this EU-wide programs like Erasmus+, European Solidarity Corps, and others. And it's just to ensure that the national Roma strategies under the Euroma strategic framework to explicitly target Roma youth. And I think there's still space and time for member states to kind of include Roma youth as an explicit target. Then when it comes to the second theme on strengthening Roma youth participation and structural representation, the EU to ensure that there is a coordination mechanism regarding Roma youth involving other international organizations like the Council of Europe, the OSCE, and the United Nations, but also a number of European networks and national organizations working on Roma youth. So we know that all these stakeholders are doing something for Roma youth, but maybe there's a need to have this coordinated mechanism and to see how these different institutions can cooperate and work together, so there's no overlap or maybe gaps. Then the European Commission to put a priority on investing into strengthening the role of Roma youth in decision-making, as well as in Roma and youth policies and structures. And the European Youth Forum and its membership to ensure a meaningful participation of Roma youth individuals and organizations in their structures, and to support the successful implementation of the EU Roma framework, especially when it comes to Roma youth participation and empowerment. And moving to the third recommendation, or the third big theme of the recommendation, securing capacity building opportunities for Roma youth. And this can be done through information about access to learning and training, employment or traineeship opportunities, but also funding. Yeah, so we say that European, national, and local authorities and NGOs should organize information sessions, forums, targeting Roma youth about the opportunities available for participation, and in the same time to create outreach strategies to disseminate information for training and learning opportunities for Roma youth. The OSCE, the Council of Europe, the European Commission to create training opportunities for developing the political skills of young Roma in order to become political actors. As we have seen from the graphs, they're not really involved into politics, so maybe that's a niche that can be further developed. NGOs, EU and national programs to design and implement projects that contribute to improving the digital competencies of young Roma, to regularly organize advocacy trainings for young Roma people, and to support and offer trainings and activities to boost Roma youth knowledge about both EU and national level policymaking processes. And also we have another recommendations to create a wide range of internship and employment opportunities and programs for young Roma, both at EU institutions and within EU programs. The European Commission must put a priority on investing into the empowerment and capacity building of Roma youth, but also on Roma youth civil society as important actors. And lastly, international, European, and national institutions and organizations should financially support the participation of the young Roma people in consultation processes and other forms of civic engagement. Yeah, it was revealed through our data that maybe financial resources are an important barrier for Roma youth participation. So there should be some sort of financial support in this regard. And the last set of recommendations is related to anti-Gypsyism. As we have said, Roma youth are widely affected by anti-Gypsyism. And these are not maybe specifically targeted recommendations, but maybe more general. So international, EU, national, regional, and local actors should provide tools for young Roma to fight against discrimination, anti-Gypsyism, and hate speech, both online and offline, such as training, educational, and financial resources, to provide Roma youth with spaces to express their cultural identity. Yeah, and this can be made under forms of Roma cultural centers or different types of activities and gatherings, even informal gatherings or not so formal, let's say, festivals. Securing a space for young Roma to have editorial power and ownership of Roma representation in mainstream media. I think this is very much related to the image the larger society has about Roma. So having Roma there present would contribute to change this most of the times negative representation of the Roma. Then investing in programs, encouraging Roma youth to research Roma history, language, and culture. So it's very important that Roma youth start kind of this process of research themselves, and they are engaged in doing so. Promoting awareness and recognition of the Roma and Sinti Holocaust, including Roma history and culture in mainstream curricula since early age, depending on the, let's say, appropriateness of the information. Educating on the Roma and Sinti Holocaust and developing teaching and educational materials by national governments and responsible ministries, involving Roma scholars and Roma civil society. And lastly, investing in programs for young Roma to produce pieces of art in order to promote positive images of Roma through movies, videos, audios, theater, paintings, photographs, books, and others. So these were some of the selected recommendations for the individual report. And now I would move to the NGO report. So as I said, we really wanted to hear from NGOs working with and for Roma youth, what are some of their kind of perspectives on Roma youth participation. So we had the online survey, as I said. The survey was mainly in English. It targeted only organizations from the European Union. We had 18 countries represented, and in total we gathered 33 responses. And now moving towards the findings. Yeah, so as you can see here, most of the organizations present in the study had a broader scope, but they included, they have a section dedicated to youth. Yeah, so 53% of the respondents, and just 32% of them were NGOs exclusively dedicated to youth, and the remaining were youth, political or social movements, and also NGOs concerned about social inclusion, but not necessarily on Roma. Also, most of the respondents operate at multiple levels, so both international, European, national, and local, or regional. But as you can see here, most of them were operating at the national level. But in general, this kind of borders are not so clear. You know, they can be a local NGO, but they are part of a European level network. So their scale of operation differs. And I think this is good because they could give us insights into, you know, the general situation they found themselves in. Yeah, so we asked them how well are young Roma represented at the European level through NGOs or networks. And as you can see here, I think most of the respondents moved towards middle right. Yeah, so not so well represented or poorly represented. And I think it's good to know that this is the opinion of NGOs, but not necessarily, I mean, NGOs who are working with Roma youth or for Roma youth. And I think this shows a bit, you know, where do we stand currently. Yeah, and then in terms of the profile of the organization, again, we can see that most of the organizations that we have surveyed are focusing on education, on social inclusion, minority rights, and it makes total sense. But we can see that aspects such as gender, youth and the war, well-being are kind of ignored, or maybe not the main focus, but hopefully in the upcoming period, we see that more organizations are trying to diversify their work and maybe promote a more comprehensive approach to this type of issues or their coverage. And we know this depends on their capacity, on their finances and projects they run. But yeah, we see now that education, social inclusion, human rights are maybe the most important issues addressed by these organizations. Yeah, in terms of assessing the NGOs' capacity, we could see that most of the NGOs that we have surveyed are kind of actually differ in terms of their capacity. As I said, they operate both at the international, European, national level. So it's very difficult to say how strong they are in terms of running projects. But we see that 35% of them do not have, have submitted some projects for funding, and 24% of them do not have any project now. So this shows a bit, where do they stand? Of course, the survey was running in 2020, April, May. So maybe the timing of the survey was not the best one. But yeah, 24% of them do not have any project now, and 38% of them have between 3 and 6 projects running. Just a short overview on their capacity. Then we asked them whether they think that there are enough Roma civic organizations accessible to Roma youth in the country where these NGOs operate. And I think the findings are quite striking. So they think 70% of them believe that there are not enough civic organizations accessible to young Roma. Yeah, so again, just to emphasize, the need to invest in young and Roma civic society organizations. And then we also asked them to evaluate the quality of Roma youth participation. So we asked them what's the level of youth civic participation in the country where they operate. And the opinions were rather shared. So 45% of them said that few of Roma youth are very active, whereas almost 40% of them said that Roma youth are not so active. So this is a strange kind of thing. But then we asked them later on how many people they reach out. And most of the NGOs said that between 100 and 200. And very few of them said that more than 200 young people are reached with their activities per year. Yes, and then we asked them to what extent Roma youth volunteer in their region, community, or country. And again, rather kind of negative perception or not so, let's say, big picture. 45% of them said that volunteering is not a priority for Roma youth. And 24% believe that there are some Roma youth who are very active and are very much involved in volunteering. And only 20% of them say that Roma youth volunteer on a regular basis. And yeah, the last one, 11% say that there are no opportunities for Roma youth to volunteer. So again, if you look at, let's say, rural areas or small cities, it's kind of difficult for Roma youth and also youth in general to find organizations to volunteer. This implies commuting and other additional costs. So this might be, again, an issue to think about. Then we asked our respondents what are the main barriers to engage young Roma in the work of the organization. Surprise, surprise, or no surprise at all. Financial barriers were very, very important. And again, we see this picture, there's a lack of interest from Roma youth side. Yeah, again, 22% of the respondents. Yeah, again, they pointed out that maybe there's a lack of attractive opportunities for Roma youth, the mistrust in professionals, authorities, which also kind of relates with the individual survey that we have presented. And lastly, the limited outreach and communication from their NGOs, but a really small percentage compared to the, let's say, financial barriers or the lack of interest of Roma youth. And this, again, was very surprising for me, and I think also for my colleagues. We asked the NGO representatives whether they think that Roma youth understand how policy is made and whether Roma youth are aware how they can influence policy. And almost 94% of them said that no, Roma youth do not know how policy is made and how they can influence it. So I think this is very striking, and if there is, let's say, a place to work on this, I think that would be a very strong perspective or approach. Now moving to recommendations. Again, these recommendations are not so specific, but again, very selected. So first we say that mainstream and Roma NGOs should increase and diversify their activities targeting and involving young Roma. And there's a need to support the work of local and national informal groups and NGOs to focus on specific projects about Roma youth participation and representation. Also, there is a need to bring together Roma and non-Roma youth from diverse backgrounds, religious, ethnic, sexual, and to provide them with opportunities to meet, exchange views, aspiration, needs, but also to empower them to participate. Also, developing the political skills of young Roma and strengthening, let's say, their capacities in general for participation, developing and implementing strategies and action plans related to active citizenship, civic participation, and human rights at the national and local level. And lastly, to create alliances and partnerships with other youth movements and non-Roma youth organizations targeting young people in order to create some joint actions. So this is related to the, let's say, diversity of activities, mainstream and Roma NGOs should kind of promote. And now we move to the increasing the Roma youth NGOs participation and representation in Roma and youth structures, and also in policymaking processes. I think that it's very important that, let's say, youth and Roma youth representatives are active stakeholders and participants in these structures and organizations. So the European Youth Forum, international youth organizations, and national youth councils should ensure the meaningful participation of Roma youth individuals and organizations in their structures, to provide specific measures to fund Roma youth organizations under European and national funding, to make Roma youth voices heard and to contribute to Roma youth inclusion, to secure funding for Roma youth organizations, especially when it comes to the next monitoring period of the post-2020 national Roma integration strategies. And decision-making bodies and structures should seek an active dialogue and cooperation with Roma youth organizations to ensure lasting mechanism of empowerment and participation of young Roma. And lastly, to ensure that Roma youth organizations are leading policy-making processes targeting both youth and Roma issues. And in terms of building the capacity of Roma youth organizations, there's a need to provide information, training, funds, and other tools to enable Roma youth organizations to take part in consultation processes, but also in other forms of institutionalized involvement. Yeah, so not only consultation, but partnerships, all sorts of processes that move Roma youth are kind of stakeholders. To provide funds, technical support, and ease the administrative burdens for Roma youth organizations. Some of the times it's very difficult for Roma youth organizations to access some funds because of the administrative burdens and other technicalities they might encounter. To support the establishment and development of Roma youth organizations. This was maybe one of the most interesting findings through our report. We saw a lot of young Roma not being happy with the, let's say, old leadership, both in terms of Roma, but also when it comes to Roma youth being present in mainstream youth structures. So they don't see their place in none. Providing funding, operational and management support to strengthen grassroots level Roma youth organizations. And lastly, to build the capacity of Roma youth NGOs to access and benefit from European youth instruments such as Erasmus+, and many such. So Roma youth NGOs to have the capacity to do so. Thank you for your attention. I will hand it over to Nasco, and I look forward for the upcoming discussion.
Thank you, Simona, for the exhaustive presentation. This presentation is the culmination of the team and all the organizations that are part and partnering the Phiren Amenca International Network. So for us today, it was really important that I hope you hear me because it says that my internet connection is unstable. It was really important that we bring representatives of these institutions that can really make use of these research findings. And we have a short presentation with you about our research findings and a short discussion. Before to move maybe to questions, if you have questions, I would like to break this silence a bit by providing you a short opportunity to present yourself. And then we can have questions and answers and continue to the next session. So I'll start with myself. My name is Atanas Stoyanov, and I am working for the Roma Youth Voices project of Phiren Amenca International Network in Brussels. And I will pass the ball to Georgina.
That's me. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Georgina Laboda, and I am one of the board members of Phiren Amenca International Network, and I represent Phiren Amenca in the Council of Europe's Advisory Council on Youth.
Thank you, Georgina. You can pass the floor.
Okay. I would like to give to Lavinia, please.
Thank you. So I'm Lavinia Banu from DG Justice Roma Coordination Unit, and I would like to pass the floor to Monica.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. Very inspiring. My name is Monica, and I am in the board of the European Youth Forum. And I pass the ball to Simona.
Hello, everyone. I'm Simona. I'm from Romania, and I'm an instructor at Bard College, Berlin. And I pass the ball to Jashar.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Jashar Jasharov, originally from North Macedonia, currently living in Warsaw, Poland, for the OSCE ODIHR contact point for Roma and Sinti issues. And I would like to pass the virtual ball to Anna.
Maybe it's me because I'm just Anna here. So hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Anna, and I work for Phiren Amenca International Network as the coordinator of the International Volunteering Program. And I pass the floor to the other Anna.
Hello, good morning. It's Anna, also from Barcelona. I'm board member of Phiren Amenca, and I give the floor to Ildi.
Hi, thank you. My name is Ildi, and I'm working for Phiren Amenca International Network as an educational coordinator, and I pass the floor to Rui.
You are muted, Rui.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Rui Gomes, and I work at the Council of Europe in the youth department in charge of the program of education and training activities.
And I guess we have Marta.
Yes, good morning, and apologies that I couldn't join at the beginning of the meeting. So I'm Marta Touykova. I'm from DG Education and Culture in the European Commission. I'm the new head of sector for youth policy, joining as of 1st of June, and I was already in the youth sector in the youth unit following work with the council. So I'm very happy to join, and thank you for the invitation.
Good to have you with us, Marta. And Marietta, I know your internet connection is unstable. If you hear us, give a sign. If not, you can join us later in the discussion. Yes, based on the presentation of Simona, do you have any, I don't know, questions, comments, anything that struck you? If you have, now is the time to raise them up. If not, we continue with the program.
May I ask? I would have a question.
Please.
Actually, I was looking to raise the hand, but I thought it's easier like this. So it was a very good presentation and super interesting. My understanding that this was done on an element of self-perception of the youngsters who answered the questionnaire. So it doesn't surprise me that there were around 300 participants who answered to the questionnaire. I think this is more or less what we also had for the open consultation on the EU framework. So it's like a magic number. And I wanted to make a comment, or maybe I didn't get it very well. When it comes to obstacles that Roma youth have declared as facing when trying to participate more actively in the structures, I totally agree that those were the most common ones, like lack of trust, lack of being given unequal space and so on. But I was also surprised that lack of knowledge or lack of information was not amongst the criteria listed by the youngsters, because, and I think it was super obvious since I have attended most of the Phiren Amenca events, it was super obvious that one of the most common elements reflected from the discussions with the youngsters was actually the fact that they do lack the knowledge. So even if they want to be more engaged, the fact that they don't have the necessary information prevents them in a way to become more active. And I was also like, my second question, because this was not actually a question, but mostly a comment, but a question goes in the direction of the recommendation. I would like to know whether the recommendations came suggested by the youngsters, or they were somehow filtered by you and tailored into this narrative of the survey. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so I can comment on the lack of information. Yeah, definitely that's a big issue, and it was also revealed through the focus groups. Like a lot of youngsters were saying, we don't know what's available for us, what we can do, how we can get involved. And they were trying to kind of say, it's because of NGOs, they don't communicate with us. It's maybe because only those young Roma youngsters who are educated or have access to certain networks, have access to information. Yeah, but this was definitely also an important challenge or barrier. And when it comes to the recommendations, we also had a question in the survey asking young Roma what can be done and by whom. So they proposed a set of recommendations. Then, if I'm not mistaken, there was a meeting in Budapest, a workshop, and again, Roma youngsters could propose recommendation, and I think they were like 2 or 3 days on these recommendations. And also we tried to put also the recommendations from the focus groups. So of course they said it, but we tried to structure them in a more coherent way, and also in a way that makes sense. But most of the recommendations came from them. We also had this kind of challenge ourselves in the team, like how much we should go further with what they said, or how much we should keep what they said. And in some cases, we left exactly the recommendation that Roma youngsters proposed.
Thank you, Simona. Do we have other questions? No, I don't see. Then Yes, Rui.
Thank you. No, I found it a very interesting presentation and study. I just have one question about the patterns of participation, especially the survey involving youth organizations. Was it possible to compare any data or information about the participation in mainstream organizations, youth organizations? In other words, are these patterns of young Roma of interest in, for example, getting involved or in youth organizations or in Roma organizations or in youth programs, are they different? And how different would they be from other young people? Because I know that in terms of, for example, participation and involvement in youth organizations, other youth organizations also have difficulty sometimes of reaching out and engaging with young people for a variety of reasons. So I don't know if it's possible to, if you could do any comparison, even though that might be difficult. Thank you.
Indeed, it was very difficult, and also we restrained ourselves for making comparisons because we thought that the NGO survey was answered by 33 organizations, and of course they're not, let's say, very representative in that sense. But we refrained to make any comparisons. But some of we could identify some patterns. Both the mainstream organizations taking part in our survey saying that for them it's difficult to have Roma on board, like having Roma youth participating. And sometimes it's not only because of, let's say, captating Roma youth, but also the, let's say, the administrative barriers or the, let's say, I remember we had somebody from Romania saying we can have Roma youth representative in the youth council, but it has to be this type of organization and to fulfill this criteria. So we could identify some patterns, but we didn't emphasize them in the report.
Indeed, that's interesting for me, Rui, as well. My hypothesis is that, yes, maybe Roma youth participation and youth participation could be like kind of both low, but what we could certainly see is the diversity of participation. Like we could certainly see that Roma youngsters are missing in mainstream youth organizations. So this is obvious. It is coming obvious, and this is something we would like certainly to work on, especially with our friends and other organizations from the European Youth Forum and National Youth Councils from now on, how to diversify youth participation in mainstream youth structures. Great. If we don't have other questions, then we can continue forward with how to say it's we call it tour de table, but we wanted just to have this space, this platform for discussion with each other, because not every day we have this opportunity to gather representatives of different institutions and organizations working on youth and tackling also issues of Roma youth together, and to ask you, like, to share with others what has been your work on Roma youth so far, and maybe if you have some plans, something that is being planned for youth, and more specifically for Roma youth in the future. I don't have how to say an order or diplomacy etiquette. I don't know whom to give the floor first from our guests. So not to be blamed, whoever feels good to take the floor first, please, you can share with us about your work. That's a difficult exercise, I guess. So let's go with Yang first. Monica.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so my name is Monica and I come from the European Youth Forum. For those who are not so familiar, we are an umbrella organization, and we have more than 100 members who are different types of youth organizations. Could be youth councils or scouts or someone representing a specific group of youth. And our purpose is to advance the interests of young people in Europe by trying to strengthen our member organizations, of course, but also help them to strengthen each other to work for the rights and interests of young people. And it's one of our main priorities, sort of throughout all the types of work that we do, to be mindful of social injustices and discrimination that exist in our society. Even though it's 2021 now, we still have a bunch of really unfair things going on with discrimination in Europe. And how we try to fight it is especially that we try to empower the youth organizations so that young people can stand up and claim their rights and slowly but surely put an end to these types of inequality structures in our continent. Not an easy task, but we try to support and to help out. We also try to be mindful when we are making our policies and our plans to sort of have a look at this issue that we are tackling, no matter if it is climate change or education or the labor market. Does it affect different people in different ways? And the answer is almost always, unfortunately, yes. There are, depending on what group you belong to, there are different barriers that you have to tackle. So we try to be mindful of that when we make the policy, to especially look out for who is getting the unfair end of this situation, and are there special issues there that we should be available to tackle. And also coming something like here today and listening and understanding what are the specific challenges and what are the ideas that we have to tackle them is important for that, so that we can not have it as, you know, an issue in itself over in the corner, but really try to think about it in everything we do, and mainstream this rights-based approach into what we do. One of the things that's very helpful about our work is, of course, having you in our membership network, and that is really advancing what we are able to do. We had a resolution last year tackling the rights of Roma youth and trying to shed some spotlight on the specific issues that are there. And we have also tried to include it in the reports that we make. So some of our recent work has been the Beyond the Lockdown, the Pandemic Scar report. And when we were making this, we were trying to find out, so of course, pandemic sucks for everyone, but it sucks more for some people than it does for others. And we tried to shed light on this fact by making some numbers and having some focus groups, specifically also a focus group for Roma youth, and asking, like, what are the challenges? And as I'm sure you're all aware, what we find is that there is additional barriers in terms of discrimination and access to education and access to employment. So now that we will have, in general, a problem with youth employment, we are going to have to face an additional challenge with those groups of young people who are discriminated against already. So that's like 2 layers of not great things happening on top of each other, which is very challenging. And what we can do is, of course, bring this fact to the forefront of the policies and tell people about it, so it doesn't become, you know, invisible in the solutions that the decision makers are making. We have also had some emphasis on this when we worked with the Youth Guarantee. We've been doing a lot of work on figuring out, is the Youth Guarantee really working? Who is it working for? Who is it not working so great for? What are the mechanisms in there? And we try to make some recommendations as to how to make the Youth Guarantee more meaningful, and make sure that everyone gets a benefit from it, not just the more sort of socially privileged groups already. And there we also, when we were making the research for that, we found many of the same feelings of injustice and inequality happening in the society, and we tried to then shed some light on that in the process. And for example, we learned that many Roma youth, they don't feel like the government are that supportive of them, or that they are equally reached out to by the government than many other groups in society. yeah, so that's what we try to do. First and foremost, try to educate ourselves, try to listen to those who have the real knowledge and experiences from their own life, and try to bring that into the network. I feel like it's been also really educational experience for the other members that we have, like those working on education, which is the background that I have, to become more knowledgeable about, okay, there are some additional factors here that we need to be aware of. And then we try to bring it into the policies and get some data and show it to some decision makers in the hopes that they will change their ways. Yeah, so thank you again for having me here. I really enjoy listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. We are also happy to be one of the 105 or 6 member organizations of the European Youth Forum since the last November. It was a great achievement for our team and for our member organizations to become part of European Youth Forum, which is like, how to say, an organization which is kind of an institution, because the European Youth Forum is doing really, really great work on advocacy for young people. And we would like kind of to see also more Roma, the word Roma in your advocacy policy. We really hope to have this work about including more young Roma international youth councils, which is also addressed in the resolution for anti-Gypsyism adopted by the European Youth Forum. Yes, so I hope you can give this message back to the president, and we can have a separate discussion on how we can continue working on the topic. So I would give the floor now to Lavinia from the Roma team of DG Justice.
Thanks a lot, Nasco. Actually, I appreciate it, because unfortunately, I will not be able to stay until the very end. I will do my best to stay as long as possible, but let's see how urgent are the things that I've just received now. So once again, we've had this discussion on the approach of the European Commission on Roma youth several times now. So I was thinking that in order not to be overly repetitive, maybe I will just give you some updates of what happened meanwhile, but also because we do have some new participants, I will just try to briefly contour what we do currently in the European Commission when it comes to Roma youth, and just go straight to the updates if you agree with this approach. First of all, I think we all know about the new Euroma strategic framework that has been adopted by the European Commission last year. This new Euroma strategic framework has a strong component of participation. And when we talk about participation, we also talk about Roma youth. It also comes in connection with the element of empowerment, and this is very relevant again when we talk about Roma youngsters, Roma youth. As you well know, by the end of the year, we expect the new strategic frameworks from the member states, as you all know, the new initiative, it is actually a set of guidelines for the member states. And in order to have better targets and to better guide the member states in drafting these new strategic frameworks, the Commission has put a big effort in developing very clear indicators, headlines and targets in order to ensure that the next approach from the member states, but also the European level, is going to be measurable, and we'll be able to see what has been achieved concretely over the years. And I'm going to give you, this is also in connection to the recommendations that Simona put forward earlier. So I'm just going to very quickly give you an indication of what we mean by these headlines and targets in connection to the Roma youth. Now, Simona presented the fact that it was asked by the Roma youth organization to have target on Roma youth, well, that's a bit too vague, and that's not the idea of the process, since we want to make it measurable. But we can have Roma youth within different angles of measures and objectives that we are asking the member states to ensure when putting together these national strategic frameworks on Roma inclusion, equality, and participation. So, for instance, I'm going to give you an example. A specific EU headline targets to ensure that by 2030, the majority of Roma children escape poverty. Another example is of what we ask the member states is that by 2030, we are asking them that at least 70% of the Roma children participate in preschool education, or that the majority of Roma youth complete at least upper secondary education by the same timeline. In member states with significant Roma population, another EU headline targets to ensure that by 2030, at least 1 in 5 Roma children attend school where most or all Roma children are Roma. So practically, we want to reduce this element of segregation when it comes to, which is quite characteristic, unfortunately, for the education in some of the member states. With respect to Roma, young Roma, a EU headline proposes to ensure that by 2030, we reduce drastically the rate of Roma youth who are not in education, employment, or training. Also, in the context of the COVID pandemic, it is very important to know that we have worked with the member states and encouraged them to tackle the digital exclusion of Roma children and Roma youngsters by providing access to digital technologies, in particular access to and support to online and distance learning. Moreover, since as I said at the beginning of my intervention, participation and empowerment are the core elements of the new Euroma strategic framework. And in order to have a concrete plan in making this happening, for those of you who are actually familiar with the new initiative, you can see that we have put forward in the framework a wide range of activities, both at the European but also the national level, to boost the active participation of Roma youth in the national and European structures. And I have been telling you before in the previous events about these national Roma platforms. And I know that I caught the attention of some of the participants. And I was telling you back then that we currently have 11 member states that have put in place national Roma platforms. The newest update, to put it like this, when it comes to this, is that one of the member states, which is practically Italy, decided to self-finance this process of the national Roma platform. So they don't organize the platform within the context of our REC calls, but they do it on their own, which is by default an example of promising practice, because this is what we want for all the member states, that they assume and they take responsibility for these dialogue structures. Yeah. And I was also telling you, and I know that NASCO was particularly interested in this aspect. I was telling you about the fact that we've asked the member states to ensure that for each established platform, we get a representative of Roma youth organizations working or at least being involved in the organizations of these platforms at the level of the member states. We can inform you now that some of the member states started working in this direction. We know that there are more plans, but at least I can now share with you that, for instance, Romania has recently launched internship program. They have 4 available places for Roma trainees, young Roma trainees, but they also have 2 contractual positions again for junior, young Roma junior. So this is something I have shared with you this morning, so feel free to disseminate it among your organizations, because I'm quite sure that there will be a lot of interest on that. Since also, like, in connection to what Simona was saying earlier regarding the capacity building of the civil society, as you may all know, the Commission has always tried to assist the member states in directly working with the civil society organizations in order to increase their capacity at various levels. So when it comes to monitoring of the national strategies, when it comes to applying for funding, when it comes to self-empowerment. And a way of doing that was through the Roma Civil Monitor, which is coming to an end this year, but is going to continue as of next. Most probably, we're gonna. Can you hear me? I think I hear my echo. Yes. Probably someone has the microphone on, and that's
now
why.
it should be fine.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I was telling you about the Roma Civil Monitor. We will probably kick it off this year. We will start this year, but this time is going to be in the form of a preparatory action, which is a bit more impactful than a pilot project, which was the form that it had previously. And we still intend to raise the capacity, if I can call it like this, to increase the capacity of the civil society across the EU member states. And as a target, we have aimed for 90 Roma organizations, which should also include, and this is a very important element, Roma youth organizations. So I hope that from those 300 youth organizations that answered to your survey, some of them will also volunteer for this program, and they will take an active role here. Now, since I was mentioning some updates of what's going to happen here at the European level, I would also like to inform your participants about the organization of the platform, European Platform for Roma Inclusion, which will take place on 21st of September. And some of you might know that in order to organize this huge event, we have a steady consultation forum that we involved in planning the event, but also in deciding the topics for this year. And we already have a decision on the two topics for the platform. One is going to be on the assessing the national strategic frameworks from the angle of targeted and mainstreaming elements of anti-Gypsyism. And the second one is going to take the form of discussions around the COVID-19, which we know that is far from being over yet, especially now with the worrying elements of the vaccination campaigns that we know that Roma communities are not so well integrated in this process. Another element that I also wanted to share is that we've always had funding available for Roma youth organizations here, directly managed from Brussels, and we aim to continue with this. So it's still going to be one of our priorities under Citizenship, Equality, Rights and Values program, which used to be REC before, but we've just changed it now. And another important element on which I would like to update you, if you remember last time, for those of you who also attended the Phiren Amenca event, I was telling you about the European Commission plans in making the working environment a bit more diverse in order to reflect the ethnic groups and all the other underrepresented groups in the staff of the European Commission. And I was telling you back then about the EU Anti-Racism Action Plan, which practically gave an overview of what's going to happen in this sense. So I was telling you that we intended to establish in the European Commission a diversity and inclusion office. Well, this is already in place, and it started very actively working in making the Commission a bit more inclusive as a workplace for all the people. Meanwhile, we have also recruited anti-racism coordinator, which is established, it's based in our unit in the Non-Discrimination and Roma coordination unit, and we work very well with our new colleague on mainstreaming the various elements of anti-discrimination in relation to minority groups across the European Commission, both in the form of policies, but also in the form of participation. I was telling you about our intention to launch a survey that is gonna collect data on the diversity of the Commission staff. This has been done already. It's over now. There is some work in framing it, and hopefully it's gonna be made public soon. And one last thing, and I'm gonna end with this one, concerns our intention to make the Blue Book internship more inclusive for young Roma graduates. And here I would like to personally thank Phiren Amenca, I'm sorry, for their contribution to the process, because together with our colleagues in DGAC, we've organized 2 workshops, public workshops, in order to gather views on how to make this internship a bit more diverse, and how to have it a bit more well balanced and represented for the minority groups. And our colleagues here, they took a very active role in these workshops, and they practically provided a very, very constructive feedback on that. So as a timeline for when all these discussions will materialize, I'm talking here about the internship program, we hope to see it in full, reflection of our discussion and the full implementation as of next year. So we promise to keep you updated on that and involved, which is even more important, because a very important element is that enabling people structures and space to discuss. And it's one thing, but you actually need the people part of the structure so they can speak for themselves, because I think we are far from that stage where we speak for underrepresented groups. So we have to make it happen, and to have these people within the structure so they can talk for themselves. So that was it from my side. I'm gonna stop here. If you have any questions, I'm gonna stay put for, let's say, another 13 minutes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lavinia, for all the updates you gave us. It sounds very optimistic, especially compared to the last Roma strategy, where Roma youth were not that explicitly mentioned. Boundaries between children and youth are often not present, and we are very happy that the new strategy has the word youth in it. And we can see already like the fruits of it, like what is happening in Romania. Now we are optimistic about the Blue Book internship as well. In Bulgaria, the National Roma Contact Point is recruiting 10 young people to take active part in their National Roma platform, which is also very optimistic news. So thank you for putting the word youth in your documents, and we really encourage you to do it, because this is kind of revitalizing and brings new energy for all of us in this process. Since you mentioned DGAC, I'm giving the floor to Ms. Marta Touykova from DGAC.
Thank you, Nasco. Thank you. It was really interesting for me as well to hear, of course, the presentation and the results from the questionnaire and the survey, and it's very inspiring. Speak up and of course recall that the big framework we have this EU Youth Strategy, which was adopted in 2019, and this is kind of our roadmap. And with this, of course, 3 buzzwords: engage, connect, and empower, which give us the big directions and the roadmap. Of course, when speaking about that, we face challenges, and this is as well the challenges you kind of mentioned, and I would mention as well the outreach. Of course, this is for all young people something we need to improve and to reinforce. We have as well the digital divide, which is as well, which was mentioned about by Monica, by Lavinia, and which is as well something which came up from the survey, and the pandemic kind of highlighted it as well. And we have heard as well from our researchers when it comes to the youth dialogue that, of course, digital means they more young people, but we're still a lot of gaps to address, and this digital divide is something we have to take into account, and we're taking into account. And of course, we moving to digital, it's good, it brings some added value, but it does not, of course, replace the in-person links. And for engagement, this is very important, and we have to take this into account. The latest periods when we had this online schooling, online university, online as well youth work, we have less opportunities to engage with young people and to meet them and to work with them. And another challenge I would as well maybe mention, the language skills, and this is something important to address. And we have as well, we are reflecting on this with we have this revamped youth portal, when we have it's a single entry point for all young people, and it is translated in EU languages. But this was just to kind of pick up on the different topics you mentioned. But now I would like to, yes, of course, to remind as well, to recall that in the framework of the, of course, of youth programs which are supported by the Commission, what is very important for us, it's the access to opportunities. And that's why it's important to have access to opportunities for all young people. Having access to opportunities would mean as well, of course, targeted formats which are accessible for all young peoples, of course, including Roma young people, people from different and diverse backgrounds. This is one issue, to get information, to be aware what is, to have access to the relevant information and data. What's important as well, it's when you build these policies, these projects, with these initiatives, of course, to have evidence-based approach, because to have tailor-made approach, of course. So this is something very important. So the youth dialogue, all these tools to get feedback from young people are very valuable for us. And I maybe going back to these issues, maybe I would like to start with the new programs. So as you know, we have launched the new Erasmus Plus and the new European Solidarity Corps. And these programs were designed to be even more inclusive and even to reaching even more to young people from diverse backgrounds, with targets, but as well with several interesting. I would like to maybe to inform you about some specific activities that might be relevant as well to empower young people and to target as well
to target organizations which are maybe less represented in activities. And here I would like to inform you about the youth participation activities, which are open to organizations from the field, from grassroots organizations. And these are as well targeting, well, the idea is to have as well to allow newcomers to step in and to, of course, your organizations exist since a long time, and you are not newcomers. But I think that it might happen young people to set up projects and activities. So here I see an opportunity, and I see another opportunity through the European Solidarity Corps. So with the solidarity projects, which are basically for young people, bringing together several young people to present a project. It's a huge opportunity to empower young people, to build capacity as well. And I see in the European Solidarity Corps as well a good opportunity for volunteering for young people from diverse backgrounds, and it could be as well good to set up projects for the benefit of a community, of a local community, etc., but to set up as well and to participate as an individual participant. So here, of course, again, we have made efforts to simplify access through, of course, this youth portal, which is this single entry point, and when the young people could go there and find the relevant information on that. There has been as well a reflection on the inclusion and diversity framework and strategy inside the programs, and we have as well, it is a kind of a target and as well a recommendation for member states to look at it, and of course for national aid agencies when it comes to the implementation of the decentralized action of Erasmus Plus and the European and for Erasmus Plus. And this is something which is very important, because now it's an official recommendation. It's part of the program. It was the case before, but now it's reinforced. What I would like to, of course, to remind, of course, we keep with the youth dialogue, which is an important opportunity to engage young people. And here, as I mentioned already, reaching out to even more people, young people, this is the target, and this is very important, and as well experimenting different ways to reach out young people, to engage them in the conversations. And it was very, you mentioned in the survey the lack of interest. So here, we see really much of maneuver, a kind of to improve the interest, and to maybe to show through role models or through active activities with young people, reaching out to them. That's something which has to be reinforced, and we will work on that. To pick up as well on the traineeships program. Indeed, there is then a reflection as well on how to make it more accessible, more open, to diversify the young people who take part in the group book traineeships. So we are very lucky to have these workshops and to have on board your feedback, and that's something which is in the making. It's working in progress. So we very much value your feedback on that. So to kind of wrap up, I would say, of course, participation, increase the participation, increase access to opportunities, and as well we count on you for helping out to kind of increase the outreach, and to reach out to young people, and to increase the kind of the exposure to the information. I would like as well to maybe to inform you that we are planning as well to launch a new round of application for the Discover EU program, which was kind of put on hold due to the pandemic. And this is something very interesting as well for young people from the age of 18 to have a rail pass to kind of travel in Europe with friends or not, and to meet up. And that could be a nice way as well to build a network. And this is informal learning. It doesn't require specific skills, but it's really building non-formal learning and and as well gaining confidence and getting to know each other, discovering other regions, other peoples. We have meetups, so this is something as well to explore. Of course, this we would plan this for the autumn. For Discover EU, and basically these were my main messages, because I know that you are already quite aware of what's going on, and it was very interesting for me to hear as well from Lavinia about the strategy. And of course we have the same objectives, engaging and empowering young people. And this is something which we do together, and we very much value your commitment. And thank you very much for the opportunity to meet you and to hear from you.
Thank you, Marta, for joining us. I mean, it is really important that we have DG EAC with us today. Yes. I think I'm far from the thought that DG EAC can put the word Roma in their policies, but really insisting on words like diversity, inclusion, disadvantaged young people. It gives us hope, and indeed we are a network that is now working for 10 years, but unfortunately we are kind of like the only fully functional European Roma Youth Network. There are no other networks, and Anna here, my colleague from Budapest, she's really hard working to capacitate local organizations to comply with all the rules on European Solidarity Corps, on Erasmus+, quality label. So we are really doing our best to achieve results on grassroots. This is just yeah, to explain what we are doing, and we hope that we can also support these groups of informal young people to apply with the opportunities given. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that we can be further part of the youth dialogues as well at national levels, I guess. There's also a lot of to be asked there in terms of diversity and inclusion. Now we have Rui from the Council of Europe. Would you like to share what are the plans of Council of Europe, and whether you see any plans for collaboration with the colleagues from the Commission, Rui?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Thank you, Atanas, for this question, for raising it. Well, I think that's also a question for the colleagues of the Commission to address. Of course, we cooperate with the Commission in several projects, not necessarily in the youth sector, but we'll of course be open to consider other ways of cooperating or engaging if the circumstances are met. I think first of all, I think we know that the Council of Europe and Phiren Amenca, but also other Roma youth organizations and networks have already a long history of cooperation. And that's very good. And we are really happy to see that this develops, and that also the Roma youth networks take root in the European youth movements, as we have seen with the Phiren Amenca and the European Youth Forum. That's very important for us. What I would like to talk about now is really what we have in stock, but perhaps inform everybody that at the moment Phiren Amenca is member of our Advisory Council on Youth, and Georgina in particular, she's the Roma rapporteur in our statutory bodies. And I think that's quite important to keep in mind, because in this way, Roma Youth, at least one Roma Youth network, is part of the decision-making and regularly taking part in the youth policy discussions and decisions within the Council of Europe. Of course, one can say this is not enough, but it is important to say that this has been going on for some years now, and we would like, of course, to continue and deepen and extend this this form of participation, which includes also participation in decision making. Now, within the Council of Europe, I think that you know that there are basically two areas where Roma Youth is present. On the one hand is a strategic action plan for Roma and travelers inclusion, which is led by the Roma and travelers team. And now the current plan goes until 2025. And the other one is more specifically the program that I'm in charge of, which is the Youth for Democracy program. Within the Council of Europe action plan for Roma and travelers inclusion, youth, sadly enough, Roma young people are not a specific target group or a specific area of intervention of the action plan, but it's mentioned several times as groups that need specific empowerment procedures and processes, together with women, for example. And there is also specific attention to Roma youth when it comes to access to education and employment. So it is present there, but let's be frank, also within the Council of Europe, the distribution of work will make it that it is the youth department who will take the lead in involving and running activities with Roma young people. And I think that's fine. That's exactly what it should be and how we should work together. Now, the study that Simona presented to a large extent echoes the work that we have been doing in the Roma task force over the last year. We have set the Joint Council on Youth, which is our decision-making body, has set up a task force to assess and make proposals regarding a possibility for a standard-setting recommendation or a standard-setting instrument of the Council of Europe regarding Roma youth participation. And this task force has also ordered a study which is not as ambitious as the one that Simona presented, but still, to a large extent, confirms that at least when it comes to participation in national youth structures and bodies, Roma young people are often underrepresented, and they are very often also invisible. And so our work in the youth sector, especially, is very much about, on the one hand, securing visibility for Roma young people and for the work with Roma youth, because if it's not visible, our experience is that it goes ignored sometimes. And the other point is to secure, nonetheless, a certain degree of intersectionality and also of mainstreaming, in the sense that Roma young people should also be able to take part in any other activities of the Council of Europe and of the youth sector. And that's a little bit like the Commission was presenting. They are not all of them are necessarily programs for Roma young people, but they should also be open for Roma young people. And I think there is a permanent work to do by the Roma youth networks, by the Council of Europe, and by other organizations and national youth institutions to make sure that participation and access, especially, are real and are a real possibility and not just an abstract possibility that we sometimes hear about. This year, also, we have placed, as some of you may have followed, a specific attention on supporting Roma young people's sense of identity and cultural heritage. This was notably around the 8th of April, an International Roma Day, an activity that we organized with the Roma and Travelers team. And I think that it gave us quite some insights on the question also of history teaching and history of Roma. And I think we would like to continue in this direction together. And when I say together, I mean with the Roma team, but also with the Roma youth organizations and networks, because that has been, I think, a very unique form of cooperation and also a very fruitful one. Of course, it was online. There's its limits, but it was, I think, very useful as a form of cooperation. Then it's the question of combating anti-Gypsyism remains always on the agenda, because whether it is about discrimination, whether it is specifically anti-Gypsyism, or sometimes racist violence, we need to work with non-Roma and with young Roma to empower, to inform, and to mobilize for human rights for all. And I think this question of human rights needs to be brought to the center of the debate. And that's, I think, to a large extent what we will be doing with the future recommendation of the Committee of Ministers. Because what we have achieved so far is that the Joint Council on Youth in March agreed to the principle of asking the Committee of Ministers to prepare a recommendation on Roma youth participation and possibly combating anti-Gypsyism. I'm not sure about if this last part will be in the title, but in any case, it is understood, as we have also seen and heard from the different speakers, that the question of participation and discrimination are very closely linked. So directly or indirectly, we will also be tackling anti-Gypsyism. But this recommendation, we hope to start working on it next year, and hopefully drafting it next year and tabling it to the Committee of Ministers for decision still in the course of 2022. And for this, we hope to continue the consultation and co-decision with Roma youth organizations and Roma youth representatives. I hope that we'll still have a meeting of the task force another meeting in 2021. So to review a little bit where we are and in which direction the recommendation should go, so that we go as quickly as possible next year into finalizing the draft. And let me say why this work is so important. Because within the Council of Europe system, if there are no standards which are agreed by the member states, it's of course possible to work, and we do a lot of work without having them. But it is, if we want action to be taken at national level, and I think we agree that a lot of the action has to take place at national level, then governments have to live up to their responsibilities, and sometimes we also have to remind them of what their obligations in relation to human rights and democracy and the rule of law are. So our expectation is that such a recommendation, if adopted, will also give youth Roma organizations the possibility to advocate for their rights within their national context and to work closer with national youth councils, with other youth organizations, to make sure that Roma young people are taken into account and are also invited around the tables of youth policies, programs, and any other matter that concerns their present and their future. We also keep on supporting Roma youth organizations, and here I should also draw your attention to the work of the European Youth Foundation. So it's a possibility that exists there for, especially through these pilot actions, which are now possible to apply for up to 15,000 euros. And I never tire of stressing that it is very important, and if it's local organizations, do apply to the European Youth Foundation, because if you don't apply, then I'm sure that you don't get your support or activity supported. And if you have any feedback to give to the European Youth Foundation, don't hesitate. I mean, either directly or through myself or my colleagues. And similarly, we also invite, because it's part of our program, we invite Roma youth organizations and networks to apply for sessions at the European Youth Center. Now, the work of the European Youth Center has, of course, been challenged a little bit by the COVID-19. We know that, because not always possible to travel and it's not possible to meet. We hope this will change. I think that many of us hope that. But in any case, it will be important to receive such projects and such ideas for study sessions, because this is, whether we want it or not, this is also how we become visible and how you get a share of not just of the budget, but you are on the agenda in a way of the Council of Europe's youth sector, and that's very important. We'll be having later on this year, and I will be certainly in contact with some of you, a training course in Strasbourg about Roma youth participation. Especially, we will be interested to discuss together with you later, not today, but in the upcoming months, what will be the specific added value of the Council of Europe nowadays, because the impression I have is that a lot of things have been developing, and that's really great. So it's also an opportunity for us to see, okay, in this context that we are in, which we are in now, what specifically can the youth sector of the Council of Europe do that cannot be done elsewhere, or can be done better here than somewhere else. That's a very important point. The training course, I think it is in the second week of October. And we will continue in this respect, also supporting the translation and development of educational resources to support Roma youth multipliers in their work for human rights education, youth participation, or youth projects. And here again, I mean, I stress that there is, we just opened a training course for youth workers working in these advantaged neighborhoods, and that there is no Roma tag to it. But of course, I mean, many Roma, as you know, unfortunately, also live in this advantaged neighborhood. It would be great if we could have some applications from there. So that's practical, but I still go back to the policy and to the political. I think that this work in preparing the future recommendation is very important. I think we'll, of course, also hope to work with the European Youth Forum, and we are totally open to aggressive input from the European Commission as well. But we have to make sure that this goes beyond the people that work with Roma young youth, and that actually the institutions that should be concerned all the time, but are not, actually are reminded and know, and especially are given, let's say, recommendations, guidelines on what they can and what they should do. And so I would very much invite you to stay with us and to also remind us sometimes if we think that we are not doing enough or not doing it in the right way. Because everything that has been pointed out in this study is extremely important. And I would also commend it as an example of, let's say, evidence-based youth policy or advocacy. And I would really invite, perhaps, why not? I'm probably stepping out of my role, but maybe Georgina could introduce this at the next meeting of Joint Council or the Advisory Council on Youth. I mean, even if it will be a very short summary, but I think it could be very interesting in the process of preparing the recommendation that your findings are also brought in and support, I believe, will support the process of committing member states to this, because we cannot, I mean, we expect that that committee ministers will say, yes, go ahead and prepare the recommendation, but it's never given that all member states would actually support it. And we know from experience that from the moment we draft it until the moment it is adopted, many things can happen, and sometimes a lot of things can be watered down. And so your attention and your dedication, and especially I think your critical participation is very important. I think I stop here because time goes by, but we keep on dialoguing, but and cooperating. So do tell us. I mean, this was a suggestion to Georgina, but I think it's really important to bring this out of the circle of people who work with young Roma and take it to the broader youth policy field. And as I said, any other opportunity that I've mentioned, they are on our internet site, so don't hesitate to go there. And I think use all the opportunities to do this mainstreaming, which I think mainstreaming of Roma youth issues in other programs. That's so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Rui, for presenting this fantastic news about a possibly ministerial recommendation on Roma participation by the Council of Europe. Count on us to participate with any feedback and really encourage this interinstitutional work and giving feedback to each other. Yes, thanks a lot. Council of Europe has been really proactive, strategic, and I only hope that you will continue with the same speed and the same good results you will have. Here we are remaining, of course, in contact. And now I give the floor to Jashar from the contact point for Sinti in Roma in Warsaw. Hi, Jashar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nasco. I have to say, first of all, that kind of today's topic is very near and dear to me personally, and it comes from multiple angles. On the one hand, I wrote my MA thesis back 6 years ago on power legitimacy and collective policy making of Roma youth. Actually, 5 years ago, my first employment in the OSCE was specifically dealing with Roma youth. And perhaps to mention last but not least, I do still consider myself as belonging to the category of Roma youths. So with that being said, I would perhaps like to start off by saying that, or giving a bit of context on the institutional dimension before delving into the type of activities that we are doing and have been doing. So the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, or the contact point for Roma and Sinti issues, which is a department that I work in, is tasked with assisting participating states. So we are assisting the participating states to effectively implement the commitments that they have made on Roma and Sinti by sharing expertise, providing assistance, raising awareness, and assisting the progress in improving the situation of Roma and Sinti throughout the OSCE region. In this regard, I would like to note that in 2003, the participating states of the OSCE have adopted the action plan on improving the situation of Roma and Sinti within the OSCE area. This document is a comprehensive 10 chapters document, which gives us the overall framework and mandate on tackling the issues related to Roma and Sinti. So in this regard, this document provides us with a comprehensive set of commitments and proposed actions and measures to combat racism and discrimination, ensure equal access and opportunities in education, employment, housing and health services, as well as to enhance public and political participation and to protect fundamental rights in crisis and post-crisis situations as well. Now, fast forwarding from 2003 to 2013, there is another Ministerial Council decision which is important for the discussion at hand, and that one was adopted having a focus on women, youth, and children. Subsequently, when this Ministerial Council decision was adopted by participating states, the contact point for Roma and Sinti issues developed the Roma and Sinti Youth Initiative, and we began implementing a variety of targeted activities for Roma and Sinti youth. So, for instance, we have had multiple implementing partnership agreements. To put it in other words, these are kind of grant-making activities. In this respect, while the OSCE is not a grant-making institution, we can support certain comprehensive proposals that we receive. So, in this respect, we have supported a variety of NGOs from Croatia, Georgia, Hungary, Serbia, Czech Republic, Spain, Romania, and so on. And the topics in which they worked on were youth in the area of security, activism, and participation. In 2014, some of you perhaps were actually participants to that conference. We organized the Roma and Sinti Youth Conference, which provided a platform for discussion about the issues that Roma youth face in 3 thematic areas, again, focusing on security, activism, and participation. And this meeting resulted actually with the conference report that included expert papers written by young Roma and Sinti activists and scholars. I still believe that this document has its relevance today, even though it might be a long time since it was produced. Going into some of the activities that are ongoing, as you know, one of ODIHR's flagship activities is election observation. So in cooperation with the election department of ODIHR, we also organized the short-term election observation training for young Roma. And in the past few years, we have supported the deployment of young Roma as STOs, as short-term observers, to observe elections in different participating states. When it comes to the aspect of raising awareness of the issues that Roma youth face, we also regularly support the participation of Roma and Sinti to human dimension events, meaning events that are organized under the framework of the OSCE that have a focus on human rights. But also, of course, here I would like to mention the Human Dimension Implementation Meeting, which is organized annually by ODIHR and represents the largest human rights conference in the region. So these kind of settings provide young Roma with the space to express their views and highlight the situation of Roma youth, raising awareness among officials of participating states, because in a lot of these meetings, especially the HDM, participating states send their delegates who participate in the meetings. So that's a great forum for young people to raise their concerns directly with their governments. In terms of the professional development opportunities, which was also mentioned in the report highlighted by Simona, We are also providing regular engagements for young Roma to serve as junior experts within our office for a period of 6 months. The interesting thing about this opportunity is rather that we don't have a youth-focused work with the youngsters that join our office, but rather we try to immerse them in the overall work that our office works in. This means also training with police officers, various activities on combating racism and discrimination, participation, and so on and so forth. I would like to also highlight here that all of our activities at the current stage are mainstream towards Roma and Sinti youth. Now, what this means in practice is that we have Roma and Sinti youth taking part in all of our trainings as participants. So, for instance, highlighting again the aspect of participation, racism, and discrimination, I would like to note here their participation in the Roma Leadership Academy Nicolae Gheorghe, which is an excellent tool for actually bridging that gap in preparing Roma to enter politics, but also to perfect the skills of those Roma who are involved in politics, either as elected officials or as politically appointed personnel. We also have them, for instance, in our human rights monitoring and reporting trainings, enabling them or enhancing rather their skills on how to conduct professional human rights monitoring. And also we support them to do such activities in their nation states. Going maybe perhaps a bit also touching upon the local level, we also recently developed a training on human rights participation and mobilization of Roma communities, which is implemented in national languages. And we have done this in Serbia and in North Macedonia so far. A lot of our participants were youth, and we are considering forms of supporting them to do follow-up activities after this training in their countries. In the side of actually treating young Roma as professionals, because it's not only about equipping them with different skills, but rather also understanding their competences and engaging them as professionals within their field. So we also engage with Roma and Sinti youth in various activities that we implement. So as I mentioned, some of them is working on the national level, but we also engage with, for instance, young Roma journalists in monitoring the portrayal of Roma and Sinti in mass media. We also engage young Roma as trainers and facilitators of various events, including some other aspects of our overall work. Youth issues are also streamlined into our events, where we invite Roma to take roles as speakers in the hopes that they would highlight actually the perspective of Roma and Sinti youth within the given framework of topics that we are discussing. One recent example for this, for instance, is the yearly organization of the International Roma Contact Group, where we invite prominent Roma organizations, elected officials, and also civil society representatives to highlight what are those specific, let's say, specific areas of intervention where we need to focus in the year ahead. So this is a bit of a highlight on the type of things that we have done, the type of things that we are doing. But I believe that touching upon also the report that Simona highlighted, I believe that the question which still remains kind of to be addressed, and not necessarily from institutional standpoint, but rather something that Roma should identify themselves is, while we already identified those, let's say, 10 areas in which we need support, generally speaking, on combating racism and discrimination, participation, and so on and so forth, I would be interested to hear what is the specific scope of activities they see as relevant within the realm of combating racism and discrimination, or within the realm of improving access to services, or whether we are discussing political participation, what kind of trainings they envision, and so on and so forth. So I think that these kind of inputs would be useful. Perhaps they are mentioned in the report, which might be kind of a overlap a bit here in my speech, but it would be interesting to note, especially in the aspect of let's say the current circumstances with the pandemic. So while we are a digitally engaged environment, we know that youth are not a monolith. Yeah, we acknowledge that in kind of the previous speeches that we had, but also within the Roma youth, we are not we are not a unified example. So we all have different needs. There are Roma youth which have different needs, different circumstances, and so on and so forth. So in this respect, we need to maybe consider, do we leverage the existing digital engagement that we have already built on this year, and from it perhaps try to nurture active citizens who are interested to take part in processes that affect them. When we are talking about human rights, is there perhaps a need of strengthening the collective understanding, first of all, of human rights and how we actually claim them? Or is it, something totally different? So with this, I would like to conclude and firmly argue actually that youth are, should, and can be vessels for significant change and drive, and not only in their communities, but also beyond. So with this, I would like to finish my short presentation here.
Thank you, Yashko, for mentioning all the relevant work done by the OSCE ODIHR contact point for Sinti and Roma Forum so far. Indeed, you raised so many questions, and I wonder how Phiren Amenca as a Roma Youth Network hasn't been so much in touch or in discussions involved with the contact point so far. So maybe this is something that we should consider. I think me, my colleagues, we are more than glad to participate in consultation processes or in whatever brainstorming activities or strategic activities you are envisaging to have in near future. And of course, any kind of opportunities that are for young Roma, we will be happy to share, especially that OSCE turns to be like, not to say the only, Council of Europe also does a little part, but concerning political participation of young Roma, the major institution working on the topic. With this 1201, I would like to ask the audience or anybody if you have any questions, comments to share with us. Anything? If not, I realize it was a long meeting, and I thank you for being part of it, for dedicating time for us, for the team. It was really important because, again, this was work that took 1 year and a half, and it was really important that we share these results directly with you as a representative of your institutions. The reports are available at the webpage of Phiren Amenca. Please browse through them, share them with your colleagues, share them with your networks. We are going to do the same because there is almost none, not a lot of reports concerning Roma youth, and that's why this work is important, especially for policymakers. Thanks a lot, and I wish you a good day, and we stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye
Thank
to
you,
all.
everyone.
We stay in touch. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.